Okay, so here's a thought. What if the biggest medical breakthrough of our lifetime isn't a new pill?
Right.
What if it's not CRISPR? It's not some, super advanced AI diagnostic tool, not even one of those robotic surgery arms that looks like it belongs on a spaceship.
It's a pretty provocative opening because usually when we think future of medicine, we are looking for gadgets, external fixes, something shiny to save us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the material we're digging into today suggests we might be, looking in the completely wrong direction. We're doing a deep dive into a concept called Era 3 medicine.
Mm-hmm.
This is based on the work of a Dr. Graham Simpson, but with this really fascinating influence from a foreword written by Dr. Barnard.
And that connection, Dr. Barnard, is actually why I think this deep dive is so interesting, because he's not a medical doctor. He's the CEO of Goldratt Research Labs.
And
he's a systems thinker.
He's the theory of constraints guy. Right?
That's the one. He usually spends his time fixing bottlenecks in gold mines, manufacturing plants, government agencies.
Yeah.
So to have someone with that kind of ruthless, logical business mind look at the human body and say, hey, I think we're trying to solve the wrong problem here. Well, that immediately got my attention.
It's kind of like bringing a structural engineer in to look at a failing marriage. You're going to get a very different perspective than you would from a therapist.
That is a perfect way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
And the structural problem he points to is, it's pretty stark. We are living longer, our lifespan is going up, but we're not necessarily living better.
No.
We just haven't cracked the code on healthspan.
I think most people can feel that in their bones. I mean, nobody wants to live to 100 if the last 20 years are spent in a hospital bed, hooked up to machines, unable to remember their grandkids' names.
Right.
You want to be hiking at 90, not rotting.
Precisely. So the mission for this deep dive is to figure out why that gap exists. We're going to unpack why we get sick, why the current medical model, even the good alternative stuff, might be stuck in the past.
And how shifting our whole mental model of what a human being is could be the key to flourishing.
And flourishing is a key term here, not just a nice buzzword.
Okay, but before we get to the solution, let's look at the method. You mentioned the theory of constraints.
Yeah.
For anyone listening who hasn't spent time in, supply chain management, can we break that down?
Sure. It's actually very intuitive. The theory of constraints, or TSC, essentially says that in any complex system,
A manufacturing plant, a mine.
a mine, your circulatory system, whatever, it's almost never a dozen things going wrong at once that matter. There's usually just one primary bottleneck.
The weakest link in the chain.
Exactly. Think of a hiking group. The group can only move as fast as its slowest hiker. It doesn't matter if you try to make the fastest hiker even faster, the group doesn't speed up. You have to focus entirely on that one slowest hiker.
That's the constraint.
That's the constraint.
So Dr. Barnard uses this thing called the one thing focusing cycle, which sounds super corporate, but in this context, it honestly feels like a relief. It means I don't have to fix everything about my health at once.
Yes. If you try to fix everything, you fix nothing. So the cycle asks a few simple questions. What's the goal? What's the constraint? How do we exploit it? And he starts right at the foundation. What is the goal of the human body?
I think if you just ask people that on the street, what's the goal of your body? 99% would say survival.
Of course.
Staying alive, not dying.
That's the biological imperative, sure. But Barnard and Simpson argue that if you set the bar at just survival, you've already lost. If the goal is just survival, then, being kept alive in a coma technically counts as a success.
Oof. Yeah, when you put it like that, survival is pretty low bar. It's functional, but it's not aspirational.
The goal, they argue, is flourishing, maximizing health span. But then they go a step further, and this is where the philosophy really starts to come in. They say the ultimate goal of Era 3 medicine is freedom from the fear of death.
Freedom from the fear of death.
Yeah,
That's a heavy statement for a medical discussion. I mean, usually medicine is fueled by the fear of death.
It is, and that's the paradox. If you see the body as just a machine that breaks down, death is the ultimate failure. It's terrifying. But if you see it through this new lens, this Era 3 lens, the goalposts move entirely. But we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves.
Okay, let's stick to the structure. We have the goal, flourishing. Now we need to find the constraint. What's stopping us?
So Dr. Simpson points to the biology first. Researchers have identified these things called the hallmarks of aging. There are about 12 of them. Genomic instability, telomere attrition, stuff like that.
Basically cellular wear and tear.
Pretty much. And you could think of those as the slow hikers in our analogy.
Right.
But remember the rule. You can't focus on all 12. You have to find the primary constraint for most people. And according to Dr. Simpson's clinical data, The bottleneck for modern humans isn't bad genes or bad luck. It's metabolic dysfunction.
I have the stats here from the source, and even as someone who follows this stuff, they were shocking. Dr. Simpson claims 93% of the population has some form of metabolic dysfunction.
93%. It means almost nobody is operating correctly.
And 80% of us will die from a chronic metabolic disease. 60% of adults are already diabetic or pre-diabetic.
Yeah.
So it feels like we're in the middle of a plague, and no one is calling it that.
We are absolutely failing at the biological level. And Dr. Simpson, he identifies a very specific root cause. He calls it a broken 2-billion-year-old relationship.
That sounds like a really bad breakup story.
It's the ultimate breakup. It's the divorce between our microbiome, the bacteria in our gut, and our mitochondria.
The powerhouse of the cell. I remember that from high school bio. But I never really thought of them as having a relationship with my gut bacteria.
Well, it's a fascinating history. Billions of years ago, mitochondria were actually free-living bacteria.
Really?
Yeah, their own little things. Then, through this incredible evolutionary event, they merged with another cell. They formed a partnership. Basically, I'll give you energy ATP and you give me a safe home.
So they're like ancient tenants living inside us.
Exactly. And for millions of years, they communicated constantly with the bacteria in our gut. The gut bacteria would digest our foods, send chemical signals to the mitochondria saying, hey, fuel's coming, get ready to burn, or, okay, we're fasting, switch to repair mode. It was this constant fluid conversation.
So
Yeah.
what happened? Why did they stop talking?
We changed the fuel, our modern diet, the highly processed foods, industrial seed oils, massive amounts of sugar. It basically scrambles the signal. It poisons the microbiome. So the mitochondria stop getting their orders. They get confused, fragile.
So it's like putting diesel in a gasoline engine. Or maybe more like trying to have a conversation in a room where someone's just screaming.
That's a great analogy. The signal is lost in all the noise of inflammation and sugar spikes.
Yeah.
And when the mitochondria break, you lose what's called metabolic flexibility. Your body forgets how to switch between burning fat and sugar.
And then you just store fat, you get inflamed, you get insulin resistant.
That's the biological constraint.
So we've starved our oldest friends. Okay. So we have the goal flourishing and the constraint metabolic dysfunction. This brings us to the solution, which the source material breaks down into 3 distinct eras of medicine.
Right, and this framework is really helpful for understanding where we're stuck. Era I is what Dr. Simpson calls biological medicine.
And this is just standard Western medicine.
Yeah, but not just the bad stuff. It's everything mechanical. It views the body as a machine. If a valve breaks, you replace it. Knee wears out, you get surgery.
Got an infection? Take an antibiotic.
Exactly.
And let's be fair, Era I is a miracle. If I get hit by a bus, please take me to an Era hospital.
Yeah.
Don't light sage over me. I want the surgery.
Oh, 100%. Era I is essential for acute problems. We're not dismissing it, but it treats the symptoms and the biological mechanics. It doesn't really account for the operator of the machine.
Which I assume brings us to Era II.
Era 2 adds the mind. This is the mind-body connection. We start looking at stress, psychology, the placebo effect.
The source mentions Candace Pert here, and the molecules of emotion. Can we unpack that? Because mind-body connection can sound a little vague sometimes.
It can. But Candace Pert, who is this brilliant neuroscientist, she really took the vagueness out of it. She discovered that every thought or emotion you have isn't just in your head. It triggers the release of neuropeptides. These are actual physical chemicals that travel through your body and lock onto receptors on your cells.
So a thought literally becomes a molecule.
Yes. Stress isn't just a feeling. It's a flood of cortisol that physically changes your immune system. Happiness isn't just a mood. It's dopamine and oxytocin acting like healing agents. Mera 2 gets that you can't fix the body if the mind is in total chaos.
This feels like where most, holistic health advice lands today. Eat well, exercise, that's Era I, and meditate, manage your stress, that's Era II.
It's a very complete package, and for most people, just getting to Era 2 would be a massive improvement.
So why isn't it enough? Why do we need an Era III?
Because, according to Dr. Simpson and Dr. Barnard, even Era Ta has a fatal flaw. It still fundamentally treats the human as a biochemical machine.
Yeah.
It assumes that consciousness, your experience of being you, is just a byproduct of the brain. It assumes when the brain dies, the mind dies. You're still, at the end of the day, a biological robot, a very complicated one with feelings, but still a robot.
And this is the real pivot point of this whole deep dive, isn't it? This is where the source material talks about a conflict of worldviews.
Yes. In the theory of constraints, when you have a problem that just won't go away, like our inability to conquer chronic disease or the fear of death, it's usually because there's a conflict between two underlying beliefs, a conflict cloud.
And on one side of that cloud, we have materialism.
Right. The dominant scientific view for a century.
Well-
Matter is primary. The universe is made of dead stuff, atoms and molecules, and somehow if you arrange that dead stuff in a complex enough way, like a brain, consciousness just magically pops out.
The ghost in the machine.
The ghost in the machine. And on the other side, we have the matrix of matter.
Which sounds like a sci-fi sequel.
It's a reference to a quote by the Nobel-winning physicist Max Planck. And this quote was the aha moment for Dr. Barnard and Dr. Simpson. In 1931, Planck said, "I regard consciousness as fundamental.
Yeah.
Matter is a derivative of consciousness, not the opposite."
Whoa. Hey, hang on. Let's just pause on that. Matter is a derivative of consciousness. He's flipping the entire model upside down.
Completely.
He's saying the mind or spirit or whatever that comes first. And the physical body is just an expression of that.
Precisely. Think of it like a radio. Materialism says the radio creates the music. Smash the radio, the music's gone forever.
All right.
Planck is saying the radio just receives the signal. You smash the radio, the signal is still broadcasting.
And this is the foundation of Era Third medicine.
Yes. Era Third integrates body, mind, and spirit. But Dr. Simpson is very careful here. He's not just talking about religion or faith in the traditional sense. He defines spirit through concepts like the biofield and non-local consciousness.
The biofield. Is that like an aura?
It's often visualized that way, but they try to frame it scientifically. The idea that there's an energy field connecting us to the universe and to each other. And the source notes, this isn't just mysticism. They cite quantum physics and studies on distant healing.
Distant healing. You mean like praying for someone to get better?
Yeah, intercessory prayer, intention experiments. There are studies, controversial, sure, but they exist, suggesting that directed intention can affect biological systems from a distance. If materialism is true, that's impossible. It's magic.
But if Era 3 is true?
If Era 3 is true and we're all connected by a one mind, then it makes perfect sense. It's just physics we don't fully get yet.
So Era 3 is saying, fix the biology, Era I, manage your thoughts, Era 2, but you also have to realize you're part of something infinite.
Correct. And the big innovation here is integration. It doesn't reject Era I. You still need to fix your diet. You can't just meditate your way out of eating junk food.
Right.
And it doesn't reject Era 2. You still need to manage stress. But it wraps them in a much bigger context.
So it goes from, I am a lonely biological robot fighting to survive, to I am a localized expression of a universal consciousness.
And think about what that does to the fear of death. If you believe you are only your body, death is the end. Screen goes black. Terrifying. If you believe you are consciousness expressed through a body, death is just a transition.
It's the radio breaking, but the signal continuing.
It changes the entire game. And Dr. Simpson argues that when you remove that deep primal fear, your physiology actually changes. You stop living in that chronic fight or flight state. Your immune system works better because you aren't gripping the wheel so damn tight.
Okay, this is profound. It's beautiful. But I can hear the listener and my own skeptical side asking, so what do I actually do with this on a Tuesday morning?
And Dr. Barnard is very practical. He's an engineer, remember. He suggests running an experiment on yourself, one experiment, using that focusing cycle.
Okay, let's walk through the steps. Step 1.
Step 1 is strict Era action. Address the body. You can't reach higher states of consciousness if your biological machinery is on fire.
It's hard to be enlightened when you're crashing from a sugar high.
Exactly. The brain's an organ. It needs the right fuel. So the instruction is clear. Eliminate processed foods. Eliminate seed oils. That's crucial. And cut the excess sugars. Restore that metabolic flexibility.
Okay, clean up the fuel supply. Step 1. What's step 2?
Step 2 is Era 2 action. Address the mind. But not just try to relax. The specific recommendation is to practice heart-brain coherence.
Heart-brain coherence. Is that a specific technique?
It is, popularized by the HeartMath Institute. It involves breathing in a specific rhythm, usually slowing the breath way down, while focusing your attention on the area of your heart.
And what does that do biologically?
It aligns your heart rate variability, or HRV. When you're stressed, your heart rhythm is jagged, like an earthquake on a monitor. When you're in coherence, it looks like a smooth, rolling sine wave. This sends a powerful signal up the vagus nerve to your brain that says, we are safe.
So you're basically hacking the system from the chest up.
You're manually overriding the stress response, yes.
Okay, diet is clean, heart is coherent. Step 3.
Step 3 is Era 3 action. address the spirit.
And how do you do spirit?
You deepen that coherence practice into meditation. But, and this is a really crucial distinction, the goal isn't to escape reality or just zone out. The goal is to tune the radio, to connect with that one mind.
So it's about setting the intention to feel that connection to the biofield.
Yes. Dr. Barnard says the goal is to discover what reality is, to experience, even for a moment, that sense of non-local connection, to feel that you aren't just contained by the borders of your skin.
And what should we be looking for? If I do this experiment, what happens?
Well, Dr. Barnard says to observe the data. Yes, look at your blood markers, your fasting insulin, your energy levels. Those are RI metrics. They matter. But also observe your internal state, your sense of isolation versus connection, and observe your fear of death.
So it's about noticing if you feel less like an isolated island and more like part of the whole ocean.
That's the ultimate data point in Era Third medicine. If that shift happens, so much else, downstream stress, inflammation, healing, it tends to resolve itself because you're not fighting existence anymore.
It really is a complete overhaul of how we view health. It's not just about cholesterol numbers anymore.
No, and it brings us right back to that core conflict. If you believe you are just a machine, you'll always be looking for a mechanic. You'll always be dependent on the next drug, the next surgery, the next external fix. And when those fail, which they eventually do, you feel hopeless.
But if you shift that mental model,
If you shift the model, you realize the constraint was never the lack of a new drug. The constraint was the belief that you were separate. The constraint was the matrix of matter.
it reminds me of that old quote, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings having a human experience.
It's a cliche because it's true. But Era Third tries to take that from a bumper sticker and turn it into a clinical protocol, operationalize it.
So to wrap this up, the message is really that we need to stop trying to just fix ourselves and start trying to awaken ourselves.
Beautifully put. We are shifting from viewing the human being as a machine to be fixed to an expression of something infinite to be awakened.
And that, I think, is a powerful place to leave it. The idea that the greatest medicine might just be remembering who or what we really are.
It suggests that ancient wisdom and modern science are finally meeting in the middle, and the result could be a much better way to live.
Thank you so much for listening to this deep dive. We hope it gave you something to chew on, both for your next meal, watch out for those seed oils, and for your next quiet moment.
Indeed. Until next time.
Take care.